Picture the world as it existed 30,000 years ago. Not the sanitized version from a nature documentary, the real one. A world where the bear standing outside your shelter wasn't the black bear rummaging through a campsite. It was a short-faced bear, 6 feet tall at the shoulder, capable of running down a horse. A world where the cat crossing the ridge wasn't a mountain lion. It was a cave lion, 40% larger than anything alive in Africa today. A world where the ground shook not from weather, but from herds of animals that made modern elephants look small. And somewhere in the middle of all of that stood a creature with no armor, no natural weapons, and a body so fragile a single set of claws could end it in seconds. That creature was us. So how did we not just survive that world but eventually dominate it? The answer is not one thing. It is a collection of decisions so intelligent, so quietly ruthless, and so precisely executed that modern researchers are still uncovering the evidence today. Let's start with the thing that changed everything before humans were even skilled hunters. The thing that cost nothing to carry, required no tools to make, and yet terrified every predator on the planet: fire. New research published in June 2026, examining fossilized bones from South Africa's Wonderwork Cave, pushes evidence of controlled fire use inside caves to nearly 1.8 million years ago. These weren't campfires built for warmth. They were barriers. The most sophisticated predators in the ancient world, cave lions, giant hyenas, saber-toothed cats, all shared one thing in common. They hunted in darkness. Fire eliminated darkness. An open flame burning at a cave entrance created an invisible wall that almost nothing in the Pleistocene was willing to cross. The early humans who carried embers from natural wildfires back to their shelters weren't just keeping warm. They were redesigning the rules of who was safe and who was not. For the first time in the history of life on Earth, a prey animal had made itself unreachable after sunset. But fire only protected where you slept. It did nothing about what was outside. Outside was a different problem entirely. The short-faced bear was the largest mammalian predator in North America, 40% bigger than a polar bear and fast enough to run down prey that a grizzly couldn't catch. The saber-toothed cat, Smilodon, weighed up to 750 pounds and possessed jaws capable of holding down and opening up almost anything in its path. Dire wolves, 40% larger than modern gray wolves, hunted in coordinated packs with a bite force strong enough to crush bone entirely. These were not dangerous animals. They were optimized killing machines, shaped by millions of years of evolution, perfectly tuned to the Pleistocene environment. And ancient humans had to share a landscape with all of them simultaneously. They survived by learning something no other prey species had ever figured out. You don't need to be stronger than your predator. You need to be smarter about where you stand when it finds you. Researchers studying Pleistocene human campsites consistently find the same pattern: elevated positions, narrow access points, natural rock formations that limited approach directions. Early humans didn't choose their shelters for comfort. They chose them the way a military strategist chooses a defensive position: high ground, limited exposure, and a fire at the only entrance. A cave lion hunting on open ground has every advantage. A cave lion trying to enter a narrow rock passage with fire burning at the entrance and humans throwing stones from above has none. The terrain was the weapon, and early humans knew how to read it. But there were moments when the terrain couldn't help. Moments when you encountered something enormous in open space, with nowhere to go and nothing between you and it. Those moments required a different kind of intelligence. At White Sands National Monument in New Mexico, researchers discovered something that reframed how we understand ancient hunting completely. Preserved in ancient salt flats, they found human footprints set directly inside the tracks of a giant ground sloth, a sloth that weighed over 1,000 pounds and possessed claws longer than human hands, claws that could disembowel anything careless enough to stand in front of them. The human wasn't running. The footprints showed someone walking on their toes, stalking, deliberately stepping into the sloth's own tracks to mask the sound and approach from behind. Surrounding the evidence were the tracks of other humans, positioned at the edges of the flat, forming a loose perimeter. They were working as a coordinated unit, some distracting the animal, one closing the distance from behind, a group managing its escape routes without ever letting it realize it was surrounded. This wasn't a desperate attack on a dangerous animal, it was a planned operation. And it worked well enough that we did it to giant sloths, glyptodonts the size of small cars, mammoths, mastodons, and woolly rhinos across multiple continents for tens of thousands of years. What made this possible was the same thing that made the fire strategy possible, and the elevated campsite strategy, and the coordinated stalking strategy, communication, the ability to explain a plan to other people before the animal was even in sight. To say, you go here, you wait there, I will come from behind. No other species competing for resources in the Pleistocene could do that. The saber-toothed cat was more powerful. The cave lion was faster. The short-faced bear was more terrifying, but none of them could have a meeting. The numbers tell the most revealing story of all. When modern humans arrived in Australia around 60,000 years ago, 82% of the continent's megafauna disappeared within the following millennia. Hippo-sized wombats, giant kangaroos, marsupial lions, a relative of the Komodo dragon that dwarfed the modern version. When humans reached the Americas, over 178 species of large mammals vanished. The cave lion, the short-faced bear, the saber-toothed cat, the dire wolf, all gone within thousands of years of human arrival. Everywhere across the planet, the sequence was the same. Humans show up, the monsters disappear. Not because humans were lucky, because they were organized. The creatures that had ruled every landscape on Earth for millions of years were undone by something they had never encountered and had no evolutionary defense against. A prey species that planned ahead, that remembered what worked and passed that memory to its children, that looked at an animal 10 times its size and did not freeze in terror, but studied it, understood it, found its weakness, and executed a strategy against it. Go back to that world 30,000 years ago. The bear outside the shelter, the lion crossing the ridge, the ground shaking beneath something vast and ancient. They were not the top of the food chain, they just hadn't met us yet. The most dangerous thing in the Pleistocene wasn't the largest animal. It was the one sitting around the fire thinking about tomorrow.